It takes a special kind of courage and persistence to give your all in the face of an enemy who you know cannot be defeated. Dutch Lieutenant Admiral Conrad Emil Lambert Helfrich is remembered for such strength and resilience. In the wake of the Japanese aggression into China and French Indochina, during the prelude to the Pacific War, the US responded by tightening economic sanctions and increasing military pressure. With the US denying Japan access to valuable resources, especially oil, which was necessary to fuel their expansion, the Japanese had to look elsewhere for their needs. This is how the Dutch East Indies came into their sights. On December 8, 1941, the Netherlands declared war on Japan, only a day after the sudden and devastating attack on Pearl Harbor and subsequent invasion of the nearby Philippines. Conrad Helfrich was born in present-day Indonesia to a Dutch military family. Throughout his entire life, Helfrich was a staunch defender of the Netherlands East Indies, as being an integral part of the kingdom and not just a colony. Helfrich had known in advance that the Dutch East Indies would be targeted and need defending, and he made doing so his life's mission. From the very first days of war in the Pacific, the submarine force under the command of Conrad Helfrich was already on the prowl, hunting Japanese wartime shipping. During the Dutch East Indies campaign, Dutch forces under his command sank and damaged more Japanese ships than any other Allied forces, earning him the nickname Schipper Helfrich. His strong motivation and determination to protect his home country had helped Helfrich move up the ranks and realize a solid career in the Navy, serving both in the Netherlands and the East Indies. From 1919 through 1922, he was based in The Hague, involved in developing a plan for restructuring and improving the Netherlands East Indies fleet. He returned in 1931, and in the year 1939, Helfrich became commander of all naval forces in the Dutch East Indies. Once the Third Reich had occupied the Netherlands proper, there was no time and resources required for the Dutch East Indies fleet to defend the vast island chain under its protection. A handful of light cruisers, destroyers and submarines stood little chance in countering the modern, heavily armored Imperial Japanese Navy Armada. Outnumbered and overpowered, the Royal Netherlands Navy had to coordinate their efforts with other Western forces in the region, the British, Americans and Australians, to resist Japan's onslaught. This is how the American, British, Dutch, Australian ABDA Command was formed, to unite Allied efforts in protecting the Malay Barrier and retaining Allied control over the Indian Ocean. Despite all efforts, ABDA was unable to halt the onslaught of Japanese offensive operations in the Pacific. The most daring attempt to halt the Japanese war machine was made on February 27, 1942, during the Battle of the Java Sea, in which the Allies suffered heavy losses. 2 light cruisers and 3 destroyers were sunk, and 2 heavy cruisers were damaged. Admiral Dorman, Conrad Helfrich's subordinate, went down with his flagship light cruiser De Ruyter. ABDA Command was subsequently dissolved, and soon after, in March, the Dutch East Indies fell into Japanese hands. Helfrich was forced to retreat, but the war wasn't over yet.
Hollandia, 1,150 miles from the Philippines, is in Allied hands.
In 1945, Conrad Helfrich was promoted to Lieutenant Admiral. On September 2nd, also known as VJ Day, Helfrich was chosen to represent his country at the surrender ceremony aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, where he lent his signature to the Instrument of Surrender on behalf of the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always. These proceedings are closed.
The victory was a sobering and solemn event, clouded with concerns about the consequences of the invasion. Lieutenant Admiral Helfrich fought right until the end of the war and lived to see his home freed from Japanese occupation.